It is Sunday, June 22nd, and the Islamic Republic of Iran officially responds to the U.S. striking and likely obliterating their nuke enrichment sites. Head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Raisin Kane, which I have to say, probably the most awesome name for a chairman of the Joint Chiefs. He raised Kane last night, that's for sure. Also, the FBI raising the threat level domestically, warning of Iran-aligned sleeper cells, and the BDA, the Battle Damage Assessment. We're hearing preliminary reports that Natanz is gone, completely erased from the map. And what is going on between POTUS and our man, Representative Thomas Massie? We get some answers from Mr. Massie himself. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps out the channel. And consider subscribing if you appreciate these regular updates.
To respond to any Iranian retaliation or proxy attacks, which would be an incredibly poor choice. We will defend ourselves.
President Trump giving the go signal, ordering the strikes on Iran's nuclear enrichment sites, flying 7 B-2 stealth bombers departing out of Whitman Air Force Base in Missouri, departing from mainland U.S., flying into Iran under the cover of darkness, dropping 14 of those 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs on Iran's most sensitive government facilities. We were hearing, people were speculating they needed to drop 2 of them. They dropped 14. The Pentagon reporting they were able to achieve all of this without a single Iranian plane taking off or any Iranian air defenses being pinged, meaning the B-2s, for all intents and purposes, were invisible to enemy radar. That's impressive and frightening if you're in Iran. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Raisin Kane, delivering a press conference this morning with SecDef Pete Hegseth, laying out some of the op details for Operation Midnight Hammer, undoubtedly raising Kane last night over the skies of Iran. Roll the tape.
At midnight Friday into Saturday morning, a large B-2 strike package comprised of bombers launched from the continental United States. As part of the plan to maintain tactical surprise, part of the package proceeded to the west and into the Pacific as a decoy, a deception effort known only to an extremely small number of planners and key leaders here in Washington and in Tampa. The main strike package, comprised of 7 B-2 Spirit bombers, each with 2 crew members, proceeded quietly to the east with minimal communications. Throughout the 18-hour flight into the target area, the aircraft completed multiple in-flight refuelings. Once over land, the B-2s linked up with escort and support aircraft in a complex, tightly timed maneuver requiring exact synchronization across multiple platforms in a narrow piece of airspace, all done with minimal communications. This type of integration is exactly what our joint force does better than anyone else in the world. Our forces remain on high alert and are fully postured to respond to any Iranian retaliation or proxy attacks, which would be an incredibly poor choice. We will defend ourselves. The safety of our service members and civilians remains our highest priority.
The Islamic Republic of Iran officially responding now, admitting their nuke sites were in fact attacked last night and appearing to capitulate a bit to President Donald Trump, saying the door for talks with the U.S. are open, just not at this very minute. Listen to what the foreign minister of Iran just said.
Of course, the door for diplomacy should be always keep open, but this is not the case right now. My country has been under attack, under aggression, and we have to respond based on our legitimate right of self-defense. And we will do that as long as needed and necessary.
Iran's parliament voting this morning to use their navy to try and close the Strait of Hormuz, something which social media is lighting up over, but something I highly doubt they're going to be doing. Closing the strait is something that's great to use in leverage for negotiation, a deterrent to wave around before being attacked. But in reality, it's the last thing Iran's Navy wants to do. There's a reason they've never done it before. First of all, it's incredibly difficult to try and do operationally. The Strait is this narrow waterway connecting the Persian Gulf to the Arabian Sea. Iran's Navy would have to somehow shut down a 60-mile wide stretch of ocean. 60 miles is the narrowest point, by the way. Doing that would put their Navy at risk. Israel can begin picking off those speedboats of theirs, not to mention the countries who would suffer the most if they did close the strait by mining it, let's say, would be Iran themselves and then China. So we'll see what happens, but I highly doubt they'll be doing that. What we're waiting on now is the official BDA, the official battle damage assessment of these strikes. The preliminary BDA is showing Natanz was completely obliterated. And it's believed that Fordo is also completely destroyed. The big question at the moment is the BDA for the existing stockpile of enriched uranium. Where is that uranium right now? Did they move it? Is it destroyed? At this point, it's believed that the majority of Iran's 60% threshold enriched uranium was being stored at Natanz and wasn't moved beforehand. The stockpile was in that facility, they believe, when it was destroyed. There's open source intel showing Iranians were able to move something out of Fordo in the days before the strikes. But regardless, even if, let's say, they managed to move all the 60% enriched uranium that they stockpiled, they now have no way to continue enriching it to weapons grade. Their capacity to easily do that is gone. Even mainstream media networks such as MSNBC appear to be stunned at just how successful these strikes were. Watch what they're saying.
Four things that jumped out at me. One, the level of secrecy of this mission. The fact that you had planes that flew from the continental United States. From Missouri and flew for, I think it's 18 hours with multiple refueling in the air. The second thing, what jumped out to me was just the execution of this massive plan involving the U.S. military, seemingly in multiple theaters. You know, this decoy you were talking about went to the Pacific to take away from what was happening the other way. The other thing that jumped out at me was that when the chairman of the Joint Chiefs said no Iranian planes flew and no shots were fired at any of the U.S. military jets. All of that, to me, is just from what they're telling us, is rather impressive. And I say, are we going to the Steph Twitty, or are we going to the reporter?
And as much as you're seeing on social media that this goes against the Trump ethos of being anti-war, the reality is this puts the U.S. in a position of maximum leverage. They've removed Iran's key piece of leverage, their nuclear program. What we're likely going to see now is President Trump secure a real deal with Iran that allows zero enrichment. You may say, why in the world would Iran ever negotiate after this? Well, Israel's still waging war on Iran. They're striking regime targets and military targets as we speak. Trump has all the leverage now. He has the power to call Israel off. If you want Israel to stop raining hell down on you, agree to this deal. That's likely where this is going. And again, that's just what I'm hearing. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is Trump now more likely to get a good deal or less? Let me know what you think. And another story that's breaking right now, a bipartisan coalition in Congress trying to bring a vote on a war powers resolution. This is being spearheaded by one of our favorite members of Congress, probably my favorite congressman, Kentucky Representative Thomas Massie, a very smart guy, very principled guy. Thomas Massie appearing on Face the Nation this morning to discuss this, something Trump was very unhappy about. Roll the tape.
You know, I know this is an unlikely pairing. You are on completely different ends of the political spectrum, but you both worked on this war powers resolution to prohibit U.S. forces from engaging in hostilities against Iran without authorization from Congress. The president just blew right past that.
Well, I think I represent part of the coalition that elected President Trump. We were tired of endless wars in the Middle East and tired of wars in Eastern Europe. And we were promised that we would put our veterans, our immigration policies, and our infrastructure first. And so what Roe and I did, we did this last week when, they were rattling the sabers because we saw this coming. We put forward this war powers resolution. I've teamed up with Ro Khanna before on this, to his credit. When Joe Biden was president, we tried to rein in the executive and reassert Congress's authority, sole authority, to declare war and to engage or authorize the engagement of acts of war.
Something we talked to other lawmakers about as well in the Senate. I know there's efforts to support you, but the Speaker of the House, who is from your own party, has really rejected this. He says the Article 1 power of Congress really allows for the president to do this. It was a limited, necessary, targeted strike, he says.
Well, he's probably referring to the War Powers Act of 1973, but that's been misinterpreted. There was no imminent threat to the United States, which was what would authorize that. And I think that's peculiar to hear that from the Speaker of the House. Look, Congress was on vacation last week when all this was happening.
You haven't been briefed on any of
We
the details.
haven't been briefed. They should have called us all back. And frankly, we should have debated this war powers resolution that Ro Khanna and I offered, instead of staying on vacation and doing fundraisers and saying, oh, well, the president's got this under control. We're going to cede our constitutional authority.
President Trump responding to Thomas Massie, writing on Truth Social today, Congressman Thomas Massie of Kentucky is not MAGA, even though he likes to say he is. Actually, MAGA doesn't want him, doesn't know him, and doesn't respect him. He is a negative force who almost always votes no matter how good something may be. He's a simple-minded grandstander who thinks it's good politics for Iran to have the highest level nuclear weapon, while at the same time yelling death to America at every chance they get. Iran has killed and maimed thousands of Americans and even took over the American embassy in Tehran under the Carter administration. We had a spectacular military success yesterday, taking the bomb right out of their hands, and they would use it if they could. But as usual, and despite all the praise and accolades received, this lightweight congressman is against what was so brilliantly achieved last night in Iran. Massie is weak, ineffective, and votes no on virtually everything put before him. Rand Paul Jr., no matter how good something may be, MAGA should drop this pathetic loser, Tom Massie, like the plague. The good news is that we will have a wonderful American patriot running against him in the Republican primary, and I'll be out in Kentucky campaigning really hard. MAGA is not about lazy, grandstanding, non-productive politicians, of which Thomas Massie is definitely one. Thank you to our incredible military for the amazing job they did last night. It was really special. Make America great again. And look, both things can be true. Thomas Massie can be right, and Donald Trump can be right. And I think it's a good thing for Congress to vote on a war powers resolution. I think it's a good thing to have a large anti-war coalition in the Republican Party. The neocon machine, the pro-war lobby in D.C., is extremely powerful. It's good to have some pushback, but I will say there are a lot of people on social media who are trying way too hard to just mimic people like Tucker Carlson, criticizing Trump's decision to greenlight these strikes last night, when this is clearly not a repeat of Iraq or Afghanistan. This was a precision strike. What Trump did last night was eliminate a long-term threat, a 40-year threat to this country and our allies, took the option of a nuclear Iran off the table for the next 2 decades. That's just my interpretation. I'm curious what you guys think. Let me know in the comments. Do you support Trump's decision last night? Or if you oppose it, let me know what you think. All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time.